Good day. Welcome, everyone. Today, we begin session 12 and deep dive into opening and concluding your academic article. This module is designed to help you craft titles, introductions, and conclusion that do more than fill required sections. They shape how readers, reviewers, and search engines perceive your work. Allow me to share my slides and to minimize myself. Effective academic writing begins and ends with intention, and the pages ahead will give you the tools to shape that intention with precision and confidence. In this session, we're going to look at 5 points, and they are 5 interconnected ones. First, you learn how to revise your title with evidence based strategies. Then you learn to construct and refine your introduction using the CARS model. After that, we will address author name decisions and identity, revisit your abstract, and finally, build strong, memorable conclusions. Together, these parts provide a full revision cycle for your article from the first words readers see to the last impression you leave. Why first impression matters? Academic articles compete in an intense attention economy. Readers and reviewers make rapid decisions, often within seconds, about whether an article is worth deeper engagement. Today's readers encounter research primarily through search engines, feeds, and databases, not by leisurely browsing journals. This means your opening elements, the title, the abstract, and the first paragraphs, must signal value immediately and unmistakably. Your article must satisfy two critical audiences. First, pre-publication reviewers, who often skim quickly and judge whether your work merits their labor. Second, post-publication readers, who skim even faster and are surrounded by millions of competing articles. Without name recognition, your opening becomes your primary advocate. In other words, your opening has to work twice. First, to get you published, then to get you read. We need to think of your title as a highway billboard. Your title travels faster than your article ever will on websites, CVs, syllabi, databases, and bibliographies. It must stand on its own and communicate enough specificity and clarity that a reviewer or immediate or reader immediately understands whether the article is relevant. Think of a highway billboard. Readers glance quickly, so your message must be precise, visible, and irresistible. Now, there are evidence based principles for titles. Research shows clear patterns. First, about 15 words is a strong average length. Titles with colons tend to be cited more often. Lastly, 60% of discovery occurs through Google. So keywords matter deeply. Longer titles often perform better, especially when they describe results rather than methods. Question mark titles, on the other hand, tend to perform worse. There are core principles to effective titles. A strong title is specific but not inflated. Grounded in concrete topics rather than abstract concepts. It names subjects directly, authors, texts, populations, places, because search engines do not assume context. And it incorporates widely used keyword forms, even if that means small repetitions like pairing gender with women. Keywords should not float randomly too. They should relate through clear grammatical structures. Let's look at an example, our title revision examples. Here you see how vague titles transform into precise scholarly invitations. The Mystery of the Missing Letters becomes a title naming the subject, the author, and the scholarly contribution. Performing an unqueer city situates a place and a time frame. Each revised version answers the reader's most important question. What is this article actually about? Now, let's also look at optimizing search engines. Searchable titles uses keywords as scholars use them. They avoid ambiguous terminology that could mean a dozen different things. They embrace geographic specificity and repeat key terms when it benefits distinct search communities. Your goal is simple: help the right readers find you. Creating coherent, readable titles. A list of keywords does not make a title. Strong titles use prepositions, possessives, or verbs to show relationships. The best and after examples illustrate how coherence transforms scattered ideas into readable, meaningful statements. Even adding an ing verb can bring life and clarity to otherwise static titles. But there are also certain pitfalls to titling. Avoid starting with non-English words. Readers may assume the article is written in that language. Avoid also overly clever allusions or puns that only insiders would recognize. They can obscure meaning. That's why we have to avoid question formats that correlate with lower citation rates. Your title should assert knowledge, not express uncertainty. So when clever titles actually work? A clever or metaphorical title works when the meaning is clear even to someone who has not read the article. The example provided, "The Dictator's New Clothes," makes sense because the subtitle explains the metaphor. The key is clarity first, creativity second. Now let's talk about using argumentative titles. Titles that signal argument, findings, or variables can increase interest and citations. Words with valence, negative, positive, improved, mournful, help position your article within scholarly debates. These titles reveal contribution upfront, guiding readers to your central insight before they even begin reading. That's why it's very important to write a very good title. Now let's look at introductions. So there are three parts to this talk. One, titles. Two, introductions. Three, conclusions. So let's look at introductions. Introductions or introducing the CARS model. Introductions across disciplines share a three-move structure identified as the CARS model: establishing territory, establishing a niche, and occupying that niche. This model ensures your introduction positions your research clearly within existing scholarship while presenting also your own contribution. This move sets the stage, demonstrating that your topic is significant and that previous scholarship exists but has limitations or unexplored areas. It asks you to acknowledge the field without assuming your readers know nothing or everything. The goal is simply in balanced orientation. Move 2: establishing a niche. Here you identify the gap, and this may be an overlooked population, a fresh quotation, a contradiction in the literature, or a new application of theory. This move justifies your article's existence. Why these? Why now? And why you? Next, move 3: occupying the niche. This move gives readers exactly what they came for: your argument, your main findings, and a brief roadmap. You are now fully entering the scholarly conversation and articulating the space your article claims. Now let's look at crafting, gripping, opening sentences, or crafting strong opening sentences. Many introductions begin weakly, often with summaries or questions. Instead, open with a vivid anecdote, a striking depiction, a clear critique of the literature, or a significant claim. Your goal is to make readers want to continue to sentence 2. Let's look at some examples of effective opening sentences. There are 5 strategies, and let's name them: subject openings, anecdotal openings, critical openings, significance openings, and historical openings. Each strategy anchors your readers providing immediate clarity and direction. But there's more. We need to provide essential, basic information. A surprising number of introductions fail to provide basic facts about the subject: who, what, when, where, and why it matters. Remember, you're writing for people who know less than you and who may be reading your work far removed from the time and context in which you wrote it. So let's look at examples of efficient context building. Context doesn't require entire paragraphs. Well-placed clauses can summarize texts, theories, terms, and historical conditions efficiently. The examples on this page show how to integrate context smoothly and effectively. Now let's look at articulating your entry point. A strong introduction explicitly states how your work relates to existing scholarship. Without these, readers are left wondering, why does this matter? And what argument is it responding to? The sample entry point illustrates how to frame your work within a debate while signaling the pivot to your study, which basically says you need to state your arguments, findings, and synopsis. These three elements, argument, findings, and roadmap, form the backbone of your introduction. Your argument is the central claim. Your findings are the evidence. Your synopsis helps your reader know what to expect. Let's look at a model of integration. This page provides a published example that elegantly blends context, argument, findings, and claims for significance. Your goal is similar: to create a seamless narrative that builds from what is known to what your study contributes. That's why we say you have to push forward for claims for significance. Never assume readers will know why your subject matters. Your task is to persuade them by demonstrating scale, relevance, or misconception, and then to move smoothly into your argument. Article synopses, and full notes. A synopsis helps readers navigate articles that does not or don't follow the IMRAD model. Full quotes, single powerful sentences serve as memorable distillations of your argument or key definitions. Think of them as the line people will repeat when describing your article. So, what do we need to avoid in introductions? Avoid dictionary definitions, encyclopedia entries, and sweeping universal statements. These devices weaken credibility and signal inexperience. Your introduction should merge from scholarly conversation, not pre-packaged reference material. That's why we need to match context to readers. Balance is critical. Don't over explain what experts already know. But don't assume readers share all your background knowledge. Irrelevant contextual information, especially unrelated cases or phenomena, can confuse and distract. Remember, you need to establish yourself as author, which means readers must trust you. You establish authority not by citing your credentials, but by demonstrating deep understanding, methodological clarity, and thoughtful framing. Your field's conventions determine how personal or formal you should be, but always own your ideas clearly. That's the reason why we need to avoid introduction cliches. Here are several cliches: dictionary openings, encyclopedia summaries, and sweeping claims about humanity or history. These are undergraduate habits, not scholarly ones, and their presence undercuts your ethos almost immediately. Now, here there's a strategic author name decisions also. Choose a publication name. Choosing a publication name is both practical and personal. Consistency helps with citation tracking, but life changes and identity shifts also matter. The point is simply to encourage you to be thoughtful and intentional in your decision making. Extrinsic factors in name selection. Extrinsic concerns include uniqueness, disambiguation, alphabetization conventions, and how common your name is in databases. Names from diverse linguistic traditions may be misfiled unless adopted or hyphenated. That's why we need to address author disambiguation. You're encouraged to test versions of your name in Google Scholar to determine uniqueness and potential confusion. For those with very common names, even adding a middle initial or alternative form can reduce ambiguity. Now, this also has something to do with name biases. A difficult truth: names associated with certain genders, races, and cultures face bias in evaluation. Research supports this pattern across contexts, including hiring and scholarship. This affirms your right to protect your interests while also acknowledging the power of publishing under your own authentic name. Let's look at some intrinsic name factors. These turn slowly to something more deeply personal. How names reflect identity, family, transitions, or values. Your publication name should feel suitable and representative of who you are becoming as a scholar. So we're done already with the 3 points there: titles, introductions, names. Let's look at the fourth point on conclusions. Understanding conclusions. Conclusions may rank below introductions in critical importance, but they still shape memorability and citation impact. Conclusions reaffirm arguments, evaluate evidence, and gesture outward toward broader implications. Let's look at some structures of a effective set of conclusions. Good conclusions move through 3 layers: internal evaluation of argument, connection to scholarly context, and broader implications, which means why this matters beyond the article. What conclusions should accomplish? A conclusion synthesizes rather than repeats. It shows how your evidence has proven your argument. It reaffirms relevance and expands outward to suggest consequences, predictions, or solutions. Humanity's conclusions may take on more lyrical tones, but scientific ones may emphasize limitations and future research. This has something to do, of course, with disciplinal variations. Scientific conclusions focus on findings, significance, limitations, and next steps. Humanities conclusions highlight argumentative contributions and subject significance. Social science conclusions often bridge empirical results with broader social or policy implications. Let's look at some tasks here. Your first task. This task asks you to read the full module, listen to it again, and revise your title. It encourages collaborative title workshops and emphasizes time tracking as part of your writing discipline. Here you can look at the title checklist. He, uh, and here you see a comprehensive one: specificity, clarity, keyword use, structure, argument signal, and appeal. It is not necessary to check every box, but strong titles meet most criteria. Now, of course, you can also workshop on your title. A guided collaborative process helps produce stronger titles. Collegial brainstorming, clarifying questions, strategic revisions often unlock insights the author alone cannot see. Task 2: molding your introduction. This task focuses on molding the introduction through the CARS model, strengthening your opening sentence, and verifying essential elements. This is where your article's argumentative foundation crystallizes. We can also look at the introduction quality chart. This visual chart emphasizes that argument statements and significance claims are the central pillars of an introduction, though all elements matter. Here, we can look at an introduction to elements assessment. This self-evaluation page prompts you to assess opening strength, context clarity, argument positioning, and significance claims. It guides your revision process with precision. Let's look at your task 3, and it has to do with introduction refinement and name selection. Now you bring all introduction components together and finalize your author name. This combination acknowledges that writing is both structural and personal. There is also a name decision framework. This page offers a visual model to help you think through alphabetization, uniqueness, bias, and identity considerations. Your final choice should be practical and authentic. Now let's look at your fourth task. You now optimize your abstract, making it dense, keyword rich, and discoverable. If co-authoring, you finalize author order based on field norms and actual contributions. What are abstract optimization strategies? You now optimize your abstract, making it dense. And how do you do that? Repeating keywords, maximizing word count, and using vivid language that signals importance and novelty. Now let's look at your fifth task for this session, and it has something to do with conclusions. You now shape your conclusion, ensuring it synthesizes your argument and expands to broader implication. There is such a thing as a conclusion quality checklist. A good conclusion re-articulates the argument, connects to scholarly debate, explores implications, and when appropriate, identifies limitations and future directions. Now, we can also workshop your conclusion. Colleagues help you find fresh language and perspective, especially when you're fatigued after extensive revision. Their interpretations of your work often clarify what is most memorable. Next, time tracking. This page reinforces time tracking as a metacognitive tool to writing. It improves planning, reveals productivity patterns, and encourages accountability. At this point, celebrate your progress and look forward. At this stage, you've completed 5 weeks of intensive revision. And we encourage reflection, warning you against perfectionism while validating the effort you've invested. Here we see the iterative nature of academic writing. Revision is not failure. It's the substance of scholarly communication. Peer review refines, clarifies, and strengthens your ideas. Writing is always iterative. So when we look at what we're doing, we're already in session. What session are we already in? Right? We're already technically in this course. This is actually session 12. Okay. Session 12. So pay attention, no, at what you've done. It's okay. core principles for opening and conclusions. This page uses imagery to emphasize fundamentals. And what are these fundamentals? Clarity, foundations, direction, collaboration, and connection to broader context. These are the hallmarks of strong scholarship. Now, the dialectical approach. The session itself models dialectical academic thinking, moving from principles to common challenges to synthesize strategies. Your writing should do the same. Here, you receive your final guidance. Revise your entire article. Ensure alignment. Follow journal guidelines. Seek external feedback and submit with confidence. Writing does not end when the article is submitted. Peer review will guide the next steps. Final reflections. The final page reiterates a core truth. Scholarly communication is an act of respect for readers and for the field. A strong opening invites engagement. A strong conclusion broadens understanding. With these tools, you are now prepared to contribute your voice with clarity, strategy, and purpose. Thank you very much for listening.